Have you ever wondered how people in games make these incredible character designs? Like, how do they even do it? Have you ever wanted to design your own characters, but you're not really sure where you're supposed to start? What is character design really? Isn't it just making pretty outfits? If you've ever been curious about these things, I'll try my best to explain them and also explain the 4 steps that many professional concept art teams at studios like Riot Games take to create their characters. To start off with, what exactly is character design? Character design is essentially a form of visual communication. We're trying to tell the audience something about a character purely by how they look. As character designers, we have various tools at our disposal to tell these stories. For example, posing, expression, costuming, props, shape language, color, and more. And not only that, we generally want to make them appealing. What is appeal? Well, I can tell you that it's not that every character design needs to be an anime waifu. Appeal is more complicated than that. You can think of appeal like the stats of a Pokemon. There are a lot of different aspects that can combine to create a great, appealing character. And while anyone can recognize a good Pokemon if they see one, it usually takes an artist to be able to recognize and identify these different aspects, as well as things that they can do to improve upon the design. I didn't make this up. I asked Julian Fatanto, Riot Games concept art lead, what appeal is.
Understanding appeal is like EV training. Like, it's not a one magical factor that makes it great, but it's a combination of a lot of different things together. And yeah, just like Pokemon, you gotta train for it. You know, there are many hidden factors, but once you know, you know.
Wait, EV training? I can't believe he made me have to explain effort value training on a video about character design. But essentially, it's a mechanic in Pokemon games that increases a Pokemon's stats. It used to involve doing weird things like fighting 252 Buizzles in a row to make your Pokemon faster, but don't worry about it too much. The important point here is that most people don't even know it exists. But once you do, you can work on it to make a huge difference. And appeal applies to every character design, whether you're drawing gacha characters or dark, gothic horror monsters. Even Lovecraftian monsters need to be cool or interesting. There's no point making a character design that nobody even wants to look at, right? Let's start talking about the actual character design process. I'm going to explain the process that I used to create this Star Guardian set fan skin. I actually did it as a part of a character design mentorship from TB Choi, and I can say that the process I used was very similar to my experiences working on a concept art team at Riot. We're going to start with the prompt, an overall general idea. Since I'm making a fan skin for League of Legends, I can simply start with a champion, which is set, and the skin line, which is Star Guardian. For other types of characters, you can think of questions like, who is the character? Where do they live? What time period do they exist in? What do they do? It's also important to consider where this character will be used. For a League of Legends skin like this example, I know it will be viewed from a top-down perspective. Therefore, I know it has to be readable and clear from above. If, for instance, you're making a comic or designing the character for an animation, you know that the character has to be drawn a bunch of times, so you probably don't want to make it too complex. Once you have your prompt, start by doing research and gathering reference. Google and Pinterest are a good place to start, but don't forget that books are a treasure trove of information. Generally, I prefer to avoid using existing character designs as reference, unless it's just for mood or vibes. There's some danger of accidentally plagiarizing another artist's work, so if you do use them, be careful. For my set design, I started thinking about the Star Guardian universe, which is very much inspired by Japanese magical girl tropes. Since I had to make sure that my design fit his recognizable silhouette, I started thinking about concepts that might work well for the magical girl aesthetic. I know some people like to brainstorm by writing things down, but my personal idea generation technique is to take long showers until an idea somehow materializes in my head. For example, some ideas I thought of were ceremonial military outfits, or masquerade costume parties, or maybe some fantastical armor. Now that we gathered some reference, it's time to start sketching out some ideas. Keep in mind that sketching out random things is also a great way to brainstorm. You can continue to add to your reference board as you think of new ideas. Thumbnailing is the process of doing very quick sketches to broadly explore potential concepts. You don't necessarily have to show them to other people. Some people like to start with silhouettes, but I find this hard because my visual library is kind of weak, so personally I like to go straight to lines. After you've thought of some good ideas, it's time to put them on a paper to see if they actually work. I did some ideation sketches of a military-themed outfit, a masquerade-themed one, and one with fantasy armor vibes. However, after thinking about it a little more, I recalled that magical girl anime, and therefore Star Guardian, typically have a high school setting. I started thinking about concepts that could fit into that setting, until I finally settled on the bancho concept. For those unfamiliar with it, a bancho is essentially a juvenile delinquent leader. This trope is fairly popular in anime, inspiring some, shall we say, iconic character designs. I like that idea so much that I decided to do another set of ideations to explore the aesthetics of other types of delinquents or gang members, such as bosozoku, which are motorcycle gangs, or rollerzoku, Japanese rockabilly. I probably didn't say these right. So this is the time to go wide with your designs. Here's your chance to try crazy ideas that might go a bit too far. You can always pull it back later if need be. Now that you have a bunch of ideations, it's time to decide which one you want to explore further by iterating on it. If you're like me, sometimes it might be hard to figure out which one you want to go with. There are many things to consider, such as which one is most appealing, or which one has the most compelling story, which one achieves the goal of the character design the best. You can also ask people around you for help and see what they prefer. In my case, I decided I really liked the bancho design because of the resemblance to a certain character. I just thought it was kinda neat. Once you finalize a direction, it's time to refine the design and start adding more detail. It's also the time to pull back if you think you've gone too far with your initial ideations. But just because you are going into more detail, it doesn't mean that you're finished exploring. You may have decided on a broad direction, but there are still many ways to execute on the details of the design. This is usually a good time to refine your shape language and really think about what you want to say. There's more to this, but in general, round shapes are cute, square shapes are reliable, and triangular shapes are dynamic. If your character belongs to an existing faction, it's also worth examining what kind of shapes this faction uses. In my case, since I want the skin to be part of the Star Guardian skin line, I studied existing Star Guardian skins to see what kind of shapes were in use. For instance, I noticed frequent use of stars with curved edges, wing shapes, and I tried my best to incorporate them into my own design. You can see here in my explorations that I tried various belts, jackets, and collars, but I don't stray too far from my original idea at this point. It's also a good time to start exploring different colors by doing color iterations as well. Depending on what you're working on, the color scheme may already be partially or fully predetermined. In the case of Star Guardian, I knew I had to use a lot of white with a bright accent color, so that was mostly what I worked with. After your iterations, it's now time to finalize your design. At this point, you've done a lot of work, so it's time to combine all your best ideas into one design. So here it is, my design for Star Guardian sets. Remember how I said it's okay to cover stuff up in your concept art? Remember that this is only an initial concept, and you want to use all the tools that you have to sell the design as well as you can, even if it means that not every detail is shown clearly. If additional clarity is required, you can always do turnarounds or orthographic views, also known as orthos, at this point. I didn't do orthos for this project, but I did do an in-game view, since it's the best way to get a clear picture of how the design will actually look in-game, as well as a bit of visual effects work. So there's a lot of work that goes into designing characters behind the scenes that sometimes goes unnoticed, but hopefully I was able to shed a little light on it. You might be thinking, whoa, that's way too much work for me. I just want to design pretty outfits. And that's totally fine. If you're just designing characters for yourself, of course you don't have to follow every single one of these steps. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please consider designing an outfit for the subscribe button. See you next time. Remember to have fun drawing and stuff. I'm done.